preparing the live stream meeting, and it's doing its thing. Redirecting. We are live. Here we go. And I need to turn my doing its thing. And here you go, Jane. You are up.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this evening's SD Media Pros meeting. It's a beautiful evening here in July in San Diego, and we're glad that you're going to spend some time with us this evening. We have a number of things happening during the meeting tonight, but especially we have Jeffrey Lehman here with us, who is host of a television show called Weekend Explorer. And he is going to talk to us about his hosting and producing duties on Weekend Explorer. But more importantly, he's going to share his perspectives on how production is going to be changing right now. As you know, none of us are working too much. And Jeffrey has some insights on how he thinks things are going to change as we go forward. So we're going to get to that in just a little bit. But let's kick it off first with Mark Masonov, who has tonight's news you can use. Joining us from his studio, here's Mark.
Thank you very much, Jane. Yes, so we do have a news you can use segment, and I'm excited because tonight we get a chance to get this going here, to actually do something I never get a chance to do before. And that's, we have actually breaking news. I don't get a chance to do breaking news very much, so here's our breaking news sound.
I hear a music theme.
Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. This just broke a couple of hours ago. I don't know if you remember last meeting, we had two fine folks who were yelling at one another over the Trolls World Tour movie that came out, and AMC said, well, you can't play it because NBC wanted to have all their new movies come out, go directly to digital, and AMC said no, and that's big hassle. Well, that has been resolved just a couple hours ago. AMC struck a historic deal. If you recall, they're now going to be able to put their films on the big screen once more and grant Universal a smaller theatrical window, so it could be on demand sooner. How small? Well, the deal, Universal and Focus Features must play movies for 3 weekends or 17 days before releasing those films on premium video platform. Remember, previously they had the rights for 90 days, so that's a huge change for AMC to suck that many days back out for it to go online. So poor AMC, they're very sad, I'm sure, except that they get to share in the new revenue streams from the premium video on demand. So they have a nice little deal, and I think both AMC and Universal are very happy now, the heads of both of them, that they're able to see the ways and understand that art is important and doing it for the art. I'm sure that was the whole reason they were doing it, for the art. Moving along, we want to work on practice safe sets. Oh, shoot, sets. Sorry, I had that wrong. Sets. Practice safe sets. And what's going on here, there's a company, a group called Safe Sets International. Take a look at that website. You can go on there, and it has a neat little course and quiz you can take about safety on set. Gives you some good ideas, kind of focuses on what we do as a set, or as a production community. So it's kind of neat, and at the end you can get a cool little certificate like mine, and qualifies you now to make $1,000 a day in Los Angeles as a health safety supervisor. So I'll be moving up there soon. No, actually it does not, but it does give you some good ideas about our industry. So it's a neat little thing. And speaking of COVID, that's moving forward. Damn the surge, full speed ahead. And this is an article out of the Hollywood Reporter. Hollywood is charging forward despite the surge. Studios keep plotting a return to filming across the country here, California, New York, Georgia, and Illinois, but they're still hashing out details with the protocols. Here in California, good news, according to an official California state document, those who support the entertainment industries, studios, and other related establishments, provided they follow the COVID-19 health guidance, are considered essential workers. So we are all considered essential workers. Welcome to the essential worker camaraderie there that's going on. More good news. Film LA has now been seeing around 60 film applications a week, mostly coming in from advertising in the commercial sector. Georgia, they're still ramping up their productions despite the higher number of COVID cases there in the heated political battle. So they are marching forward. New York is entering their phase 4, which means they can have projects as long as they don't have more than 50 people. They don't interfere with hospitals or testing centers. They don't block streets or get too close to restaurants with outdoor seating without permission from the establishment. And, oops, excuse me. Come on. Okay. The bad news, for studios plotting their return, the approval has proved somewhat less of an issue with the Guild approval. Guild seems to be an issue. The AMPTP, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, working with guilds like IATSE, they're hashing out the details of on-set safety protocols. That's still an issue moving forward. The main issue is about these COVID-19 managers, the health safety supervisors and the health safety managers, the frequency and type of testing, the 10-hour workday caps to allow for more time to clean, and sick day compensation. The Guild wants members who failed the test to still be paid, while the studios want to avoid having to potentially double dip. So that's a big hurdle to overcome, and we wish them luck. And these negotiations, though, will push back the start of the studio work to late August, hopefully. That's the current plan. Now, for you baseball fans out there, in 2016, Max Scherzer struck out 20 batters, tying MLB record for single-game strikeouts. That's a lot of Ks, folks. You know what else is a lot of Ks? Black Magic. Just last week, they introduced the Ursa Mini Pro 12K camera. 12K. They didn't even go to 8K. They went right on through to 12K. So that 12K camera is now you can order it. Has an 80 megapixel 12K Super 35 sensor with 14 stops of dynamic range. The next generation Blackmagic RAW that lets you shoot in 12K and edit on a laptop. Pretty efficient codec. They have a new Generation 5 Color Science to deal with all the massive stuff from the sensor. You can shoot up to 60 frames per second in 12K, 110, and 8K, and 220 at 4K. And you record simultaneously across 2 CFast cards up to 900 megabits per second or 500 with 2 2 SD cards. The cost is $99.95, so it's just under $1,000 a K, under $1,000 a K. But not to be outdone, Sony, their much awaited A7S III, just announced today as well. Almost breaking news. The hopes, will it be 4K, 6K, 8K? Will they compete, ladies and gentlemen? No. No, they will not. They're dropping off 8 of those Ks, keeping 4 of them for the Sony. Still, this camera, while it remains its 12 megapixel BSI CMOS sensor, it does have a 16-bit RAW video output at up to 60p available from a full-size HDMI port. There is a 10-bit 422 internal capture in codecs H.265 and H.264. That's a huge improvement. 4K video up to 120 frames per second, 60p for at least an hour. And it has twin card slots. Each accepts either an SD or the new CF Express Type A cards that will have 800 megabits per second and 700 megabits per second read-write speeds. And its ISO can go from 80 to 102 or expandable between 40 and 409,600. And I've used the A7S II, and the thing shoots in the dark. It's really a marvelous camera for shooting in low light situations. And that's $3,500 under $1,000 a K. So that's moving forward. Now, in our It Pays to Be Famous category, in a story that came out of Screen Daily News, England is relaxing quarantine rules. That's right. They're relaxing them for select international film and high-end television stars, directors, and producers if they are deemed essential to the production. So you can read no 14-day quarantine. So come on in, Tom Cruise. Just don't sneeze on the bagels. Go right on through. That's kind of what's happening over in England. Now, to be fair, under the new rules, they will be controlled in a bubbled environment, and they still need to follow the government code of COVID guidance put in place by the protocols. And the exemption does apply to cast and crew coming into England specifically to work on film and television productions, which qualify as British under one of the government's cultural tests or official co-production treaties. I looked it up, and I think to qualify for British, you have to speak English and serve tea at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think those are the only requirements, so If you want to go over their work, that's a good thing to know. And the pays to be famous or does it category, some of you may remember from a little article from The Guardian regarding Quibi. Back in February, we talked about Michael Katzenberg and Meg Whitman here, Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman, who formed a little company called Quibi. And this was a neat little company that was going to be able to play you video in something called a turnstile technology that went in landscape to portrait. You could just turn your phone and the video would continue. Now, Quibi stands for quick bites, little 10-minute sections that you could digest. But unfortunately, lately, since its debut, it's more like quietly bilking. So what's going on? Well, since the $1.75 billion launch in April, they've generated only 1.5 million subscribers. And you can see Disney Plus has over 50, and Netflix has over 183 million. Now, granted, Quibi's only here in the US and Canada, but still, that's a little low. And they're only anticipating 2 million by the end of the year. They need another 200 million by the middle of 2021 to stay afloat. And the head of brand marketing, the head of daily content, and the head of partnerships and advertising have all left since April. And their turnstile technology, their portrait to landscape, is tied up in a patent lawsuit. So for those of you who just could not stand the portrait production mode, this may be a good news. But for those who invested in this, I believe Quibi now is starting to stand for quite bitter. So ladies and gentlemen, that is our news you can use. Back to you, Jane.
Quick turning on my mic. Thank you very much, Mark. Always very interesting and especially timely tonight, considering that we have just had a change today. So thank you for that. I want to take a quick minute and say hello and thank you to the board of directors for SD Media Pros. This is the group that does all the work behind the scenes, including putting together these meetings. So I see Mr. Tom Kinnaman waving. Tom is our streaming expert and past president. Thank you, Tom. Also on the board, Jeff Trober and Bob Unger, our CEO, David Rains, Christine Gatlin, our secretary, Mark Masonov, who you just heard from, Keith Methvin, Rich Varvel, Robin Martin, who's our vice president, and Kevin Marty, who is our chair of membership. And Kevin has a little bit of information about a change that we announced about 2 weeks ago by email. But just in case you missed that or missed the newsletter, Kevin, give us a quick update about the SD Media Pros membership.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. I just wanted to remind everybody, if they didn't see the email, that on July 1st, we reduced our membership from $80 to $50. And this will run until June 30th of 2021. So if you have just renewed before July 1st, you will still get the $50 discount when you renew the next time around. So just want to make sure everybody knows that. I also would like to ask people if they have any ideas about meeting topics, please let us know, because we would love to hear your input and things that are on your mind that we could also use for a meeting topic. So remember, the membership is only $50 until June 30th of 2021. Thanks everyone for being here and supporting San Diego Media Pros. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. You're so important to us. I just thank you for being a member of SD Media Pros. If you are not currently a member of SD Media Pros, this is a really good time to join. And speaking of sort of things that are new, we've added a new page to our website, and Jeff Trober is just going to give us a quick update on what we have added to the SD Media Pros website. Jeff,
thanks, Jane. Yeah, we've added a special COVID update page. We were getting a lot of that on our resources page, so we broke it out. There's a link right at the top of the homepage, so you can find those resources. And Mark and the team are coming up with various things, news about COVID, that we will post there. And also, as I mentioned, there is a resources page where you can find the news you can use, highlights, and other things that will help you get through this time, educational things, and things about film festivals and such as that. So we're trying to keep you informed with the website. So check it out.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. Just a little bit of housekeeping. As we go through the presentation with Jeffrey Lehman tonight, we'd like to recommend that you keep yourself on mute. We are also, we're interested to see how the web connection goes tonight. Last time, as you may remember, we had a little bit of connectivity issues with our speaker and we had everyone turn their cameras off. So whether or not that's necessary tonight, I'm not quite sure. We'll kind of keep an eye on that and make an announcement if it is. And if you do have a question, please put it into the chat window. And Robin Martin is going to be monitoring that. During Jeffrey's presentation, we're going to stop a couple times for questions at some logical points. So we're going to break the meeting up. Jeffrey's got some remarks and information, and then we'll do some Q&A and go back to Jeffrey. So, but speaking of Jeffrey Lehman, he is our special guest tonight, and we are very pleased to have him here. Jeffrey is often on the road. And in fact, when I sent him the invitation to be a presenter at this meeting, he said, I'm happy to do it anytime I'm stateside. So, and knowing how often he is out of town, I decided to grab him now while we had this opportunity. So I titled this presentation On the Road with Jeffrey Lehman, but as we're going to hear from him tonight, he's not exactly on the road right now. So maybe we should have called it Not on the Road due to COVID. But he's going to give us a look at his work for Weekend Explore and all of the other documentaries and programs he's part of, and a kind of an inside peek at international production. I'm wondering if you can hear my puppies in the background, and if you can, I apologize. But anyway, without further ado, Jeffrey Lehman, take it away.
All right. So I think I'm going to add a little bit to what Jane was saying. She sent me a request, and the only reason I agreed to talk was knowing that I was never stateside, so the possibility of being here at the same time as a meeting was very small. And then what happens? Coronavirus comes along, and I'm stuck here. I can't really even say I'm anyplace else. But when she first requested that I talk, she didn't understand why I was responding, and the reason I wasn't responding was I was on an 8-day 23 national and state park tour of the Southwest national parks in Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and all the way over to Colorado. And you're going to be seeing a couple of pictures today from that. And I'm going to jump right in here to share a screen. And let's go to full screen. And the show that I produce is Weekend Explore. I'm going to show you a sample video, but it's not going to be of Weekend Explore. We came up with On the Road with Jeffrey Lehman. But as we began to talk about this, it became clear. Jane had seen this talk that some of the rest of you may have seen as well, that I gave at San Diego Filmmakers about 1.5 years ago. And that was about producing on the road in destinations both abroad and international, and that went quite well. And I am going to speak to that a little bit today. But as Jane and I kind of fleshed out the idea a little bit more and more, it became obvious that coronavirus right now is the elephant in the room, and that if we didn't really talk to that, then all that information, that's the information we need to be talking about right now. We need to be getting ourselves busy and creating new opportunities. And so I wanted to share some of the things that I'm doing in that respect. I have a series that airs nationally on PBS stations and then on 27 Cox stations across the country. It also airs in 12 foreign countries. And that's Weekend Explore. It's been national and it's been international since 2001, and it's aired nationally on PBS Oh no, international since 2000 and on PBS nationally since 2001, and Cox since about 2004. And before I forget, because I always do, if you want to follow me, the social media that I'm most active on is Instagram, but it doesn't matter if it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, it's all at Weekend Explore. So search Weekend Explore and you'll find me. So here's the little overview. We're going to start with 2000 BC. Well, we're not really going to go to the cliff dwellings, which were actually 1500 CE after. We're going to talk about 2000 before coronavirus. And again, this is the overview. Then we're going to talk about the present, which we're all kind of stuck in, as my cousin here was stuck. Then we're going to talk about the future, and maybe not quite so futuristic as UFOs, but masks and what production is going to be looking like, and in the not too distant future, I'd say, after, if you consider we've been here stuck in this kind of endless circle since March. And between each one of these, we're going to have questions. So go ahead and type your questions in as you have them into the comments. And at the end, we're going to do a live screen. So we'll be answering questions as we go along, because I want this to be pretty interactive. And I think I've created a presentation that's going to allow us. Now, before coronavirus. So I know some of you are young, so maybe you weren't born at this point, but I want you to put on your thinking caps and remember when the biggest thing we were concerned about was AB5. I know it's hard to believe, but that was this year. And this is a monster that's going to come back. And my little prediction on that is it's going to come back worse than what it was, even because with coronavirus happening and with this PUA that the government's been offering, I think they're going to be looking to people like most of us are, independent contractors. And I think that system's going to change, but that's all production. But before coronavirus, you know, we were able to get into crowds. We didn't have to worry about social distancing. It was all, I mean, it's just hard to imagine this wasn't even a year ago. Things have changed. Okay, so on Weekend Explore, this is the before coronavirus, we would set up destinations and we would shoot those destinations. The destinations that, you know, we shoot all over the US and internationally. And we had set up for this year, starting in March end of March, were shoots in Malaysia. April was going to see us in Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. And then in May, we were going to be in Indonesia, and we were going to have a couple of little shoots in the US at different destinations in there. With that said, none of it happened, obviously, and probably goes without having to be said. So normally when I produce, I have a cameraman, I have an assistant cameraman, I have a director, I have a production assistant, and then I have one more guy that gets paid the least, works the most, and most people forget, and that's the producer and host, which is me. So this is what our crew was before coronavirus. And I bring that up not only so you guys know kind of the size of our crew, but also we're gonna flip back to this in the future part of this talk. Sometimes there was one more person, and actually probably about 50 to 60% of the time. And it was I would bring what I call a co-hostess, but she really didn't speak to camera much. She mainly responded to we would go on adventures on camera together. So the thing I think that's most important, and I put it into every time I talk about production, and that's safety. And I think if we even got a sprained ankle on our shoot, that our shoot was a bit of a failure. And anything worse than that, it is a failure. I think that safety is absolutely the most important thing on any shoot. And considering we do adventure, which is intrinsically dangerous, it's just been amazing that we have literally had no injuries in 20 years of doing my series. So I feel extremely lucky, but it is something that I focus on constantly. My director, associate producer, Jim, he focuses on constantly, and we just kind of remind everyone. And we remind everyone every single day. So if you're out there producing, especially if you're new, let me really impress on you the importance of safety. Because you'd be surprised how quickly you can get into trouble if you're not constantly paying attention to it. Equipment, you know, things have been fantastic, as all of us know. I don't even know how much I need to talk to this, except that, you know, the equipment's got lighter, cheaper, safer, better, as we were just hearing, and more mobile. And the more mobile has been fantastic for us, you know, because we're still transitioning. We were almost kind of completed with the transition when coronavirus set in. And we can kind of produce completely mobily at this point, but we just haven't done it. We had planned to do it for those shoots that I told you about that have been delayed for right now a year. The other great thing is, for you that haven't been around that long, we used to have lights that were heavy and hot, and we had to plug them in. And there's still some of those lights around. They're used on more on movies. We don't use those at all anymore. Now it's batteries. They're not hot. They don't have cords that people that aren't associated with your shoot can trip over, or people that are associated with your shoot. And that has brought insurance rates down tremendously, as many of you will know. So that's a fantastic thing. And one thing else I wanted to mention, and this is just throwing it out there, I don't know how much it'll apply to anyone, but one of the things that we have been doing for a long time, since about 2004, is piggybacking. And I call it piggybacking because I couldn't think of another word to call it. But we produce a couple of different programs. Weekend Explorer is an adventure travel series, but we also do shorts. We have a commercial version of our series, which instead of like the PBS series that just focuses on one destination, the commercial packaged series has 3 destinations in each of the episodes, and it has more commercial things like restaurants that PBS frowns upon. But in addition to that, we have a historical documentary series that's called Maritime Silk Road, Birth of the Global Economy. And I'm going to show you, I think, a clip of that here in a minute. And that we are finding is excellent. And in fact, when we shot the Maritime Silk Road, we were able to piggyback and create some Weekend Explorer episodes. When you find you're producing internationally, you have a lot of expense, not only in the hotels and flying people over there and stuff like that, but one of the large expenses is actually in the time to fly over there and to get adjusted to jet lag and such like that. So we really, our crew is, there's really another 3 or 4 days of crew costs just for travel whenever we go internationally. So whenever we go internationally and we're shooting Weekend Explorer, I always require that we have 2 episodes set up in a row at a minimum, just because of those travel costs become prohibitive, the time costs for the crew. In the piggybacking situation, this is excellent. We can create a whole second series. And in fact, I mentioned the 2004 time frame because back then we had shot a couple of pilots for a couple of episodes for a pilot series called Epicurean Explorer, which was on food, because PBS was asking us not to feature food because it was, in their mind, too commercial, although since then they've come out with a number of food series. But we were approached by EW Scripts, which was recently bought by Discovery. But back in the day, it was about half the size of Discovery, and they had 2 channels. Weekend Explore could go on the Travel Channel, and then Epicurean Explorer could go on the Food Network. Excuse me, I just misspoke. It wasn't, they didn't have the Travel Channel, they had Fine Living. So they wanted Weekend Explorer on Fine Living, and they wanted Epicurean Explorer on their Food Network. And the only reason we didn't go, well, there's 2 reasons that we didn't sign that deal. One is they loved the piggybacking idea, but they wanted to pay the same amount that you would pay for a single episode for both episodes, for both the food episode and for the Weekend Explorer episode. The other thing is that they wanted the Weekend Explorer name. Well, that's a very valuable name, as you might imagine, and we have the URLs for all of that, plus the copyright for that. And then the third, which I'll throw in there, is that any interview that we wanted to do would have to be approved through EW Scripts. And for me, it just wasn't enough money to lose that moniker of Weekend Explore, and to also have the restrictions as far as interviews go. Sometimes I wonder if maybe it would have been smarter for me to grab the money and move on to another project, but that's the decision I made in 2004. But piggybacking is a huge thing. It can be very valuable, since you can add 2 days to a 4-day shoot, and you have 2 episodes instead of 1 episode, and you basically halved your cost. All right, do we have some questions? No?
Yes, we definitely do.
Oh, okay.
I had to get to my unmute there. So Jeff Freeman has a bunch of questions. He's been peppering the chat, and by all means, everyone feel free to do so. First off, based on your description of your crew, how do you handle sound for more complicated setups, or just generally when you need multiple microphones, shotgun, lav? Kind of what's your approach to run and gun sound?
The production assistant is, we train up the production assistant, so he's really our sound guy. You know, we've flipped back and forth at least 3 different times. We've gone with just straight lavs and the camera mic, and then we've gone with where we actually had another crew member added to there that was, you know, had the full setup, and, you know, the boom mic and all the rest. And we've flipped back and forth. We started with the audio boom mic guy, went to just lavs and camera mic, went back to that. But about a year ago, we just found that our production budgets were getting so pinched, and that the audio that we were getting without that audio operator and with a well-trained assistant cameraman / production assistant, we were able to do it without it, and we just couldn't justify it from a financial standpoint.
Do you get just funny, do you get travel perks besides pay? And if so, how do you get them?
Oh, okay. So we provide our series free to PBS. I actually own all the rights to Weekend Explore, which is going to come into our conversation a little bit later down the line. We have a barter deal with Cox, so that they get 3 minutes and we get 3 minutes. Although and so we can get sponsors that way. But the primary way that we have made money is selling it internationally, selling our film clips, and what's the other thing? And some licensing to people like Delta Airlines that we aired in-flight on for about a decade, and with cruise ships and stuff like that. So basically, and the great thing about PBS is that you say, oh, well, why do you want to give it to PBS free? Well, we don't. You know, we'd love to get paid by PBS, and that's kind of it makes it a challenge. But one of the things that PBS brings to the table is that about 2.5 million people see it on PBS each episode over, you know, a 3 or 4 year period of reruns and all the rest. And so then we can go to any destination that we want, show those kind of numbers, and they will provide the travel costs. So they'll fly us over there, they'll put us up, they'll feed us and stuff like that. And that's about 30 to 40% of your costs. So that's why PBS makes sense for us. And that's something that is allowed by PBS.
Okay, thank you.
We have another gear question, and then we can start to pivot to maybe some general production questions that are popping up in the chat. So if you would just sort of like round out, what's your package that you're traveling with in terms of camera, lights, lenses, etc.
Oh, I was going to dig out my camera. We have a PL mount, which allows us to put we have a PL mount 4.6K mini Ursa, a Blackmagic mini Ursa. Okay, so we were just talking about that new 12K, but we have the very first one that came out, and it's a 4.6K, and it shoots beautiful stuff. Not great in low light, and so we're looking to actually up our game in that respect. And then we have a myriad of other, GoPros and other cameras that we mix in there, but in very limited fashion. Obviously when we are whitewater rafting, it's very natural to have, the GoPros and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, that's kind of the mix that we have. We have, and again, we are traveling up mountains and, over rivers and stuff like that. So we went about 5-6 years ago into all backpacks. So we have 3 backpacks. One backpack is with all of our lighting equipment. One backpack is with all of our audio equipment, and one backpack we can actually pack our entire camera in, and then we carry the tripod. So that's kind of how we pack stuff up. And as far as lights go, we have 3 rather large LED lights, where you can adjust the color temperature. And then we have about half a dozen handheld lights, and we have a reflector. So that's kind of the lights that we run with. And really, we haven't run into a situation where we need more than that as far as lighting is concerned.
Is it still fun?
Is it still fun? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The only thing that wasn't fun was when I got pushed off a damn bungee jumping in Switzerland.
Pushed off what?
I swore I would never jump out of a plane or bungee jump, and I got talked into it in Switzerland. So, and I was actually supposed to do it again. The one in Switzerland is the highest land-based bungee jump in the world. And then the highest one in the world is actually on an island off Macau. And I was actually supposed to jump off that one for our Big Bay series. And in fact, I'm going to jump right there and show you an intro to the Big Bay series. Let's do that right now. Let's do that. I'm gonna let's just play it. I'm gonna play about 1.5 minutes of it just so you guys get a feel. This is kind of the style that we use to shoot. I do a little stand up and stuff. So let's.
More than 2,000 years, a new initiative wants to connect manufacturing centers with entertainment and banking centers to spur on new technologies and innovations while maintaining culture. I hope you'll stay with me as I explore China's Big Bay. In ancient times, the Pearl River Delta was famous around the world for its trade in superior manufactured goods. Today, Hong Kong, Macau, and 9 cities in the Guangdong province will work together in what is being called the Big Bay to make the region blossom again. Guangzhou is the trade capital.
And stop sharing that. Yeah. and I'm going to go back to where we were at a second ago. You know, that's kind of a, it doesn't matter if it's our historical documentary series or that series, which is on modern China and the inventions that they have that are more advanced than what we have here in the West, or We Can Explore. It's kind of a stand-up. There's a tease for the show, and then with a map. And then there's actually more of a tease on We Can Explore, where we show what we're going to do during the show. And then we run into the intro, and then the show begins. So that's kind of the format, a pretty standardized format. And one of the things that I think I've learned through the years is that the more standardized we become, the better off we are. And so now we create shows that we only create, well, I mean, we create shows that are longer, but when we create a half an hour show, which is most of our series, they're 6.5 minute segments. And then you have the packaging, which brings them up to 22 minutes if it's commercial, or 22:30 if it's, or I mean 22 minutes if it's cable, 22:30 if it's broadcast. And we have a way to stretch it out to 26:46 for PBS, which is their delivery.
Nice. We have a couple more questions here about just nuts and bolts, whatever you can speak to. Where does the funding come from to produce the series? Is
Well,
this
like
all
I
spec,
said,
or are you selling it afterwards?
It's selling. We're allowed to get some underwriters for PBS. PBS likes to talk that up, but that is really challenging and doesn't bring in much money. But yeah, for the most part, it's from selling it internationally. And quite frankly, things are changing drastically. You know, from about 2000 until about 2008, we would, Japan, for example, we would get a $5,500 per episode license fee. And now that license fee is about $2,500. And on the low end of that scale, Vietnam would pay us about $600 per episode, and that's gone to $300. Another one of the main income streams is the licensing of footage. And it used to be that we would bring in somewhere between $6,000 and $12,000 per quarter and selling footage, and that has decreased by about 65% as well. So, you know, but now there's new opportunities. You know, we're looking to launch a YouTube channel, and we're going to create stuff specifically for YouTube, but using some of the stuff that we've edited before, as well as doing some other licensing stuff that we're still looking, not only licensing, but also like creating channels where people can subscribe and stuff like that. So we're in the midst of doing that. Great. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we get into the present.
Fantastic. Got another question here that would probably be good before we move on to the new normal is, how did you work with any local fixers or folks, you know, at the locations you're traveling to get permits if necessary, to line up locations, authorities, interpreters, all that kind of stuff?
Okay, so now this comes back to the piggybacking, which is awesome, because in my case, I go to the destinations, and I usually have a conversation that's about, and you know, I get approached by destinations every day to come and film at that destination, you know, at destinations around the world. You know, we're only able to shoot in maybe, you know, 6 to 10 US destinations, and then maybe 3, 4, at most 5 international destinations. And it's important to remember, again, what I said, when we go international, if we go to Malaysia, we're going to shoot 2 shows in Malaysia. So any international destination counts as 2 shows. And we're trying to produce about 12 to 13 We Can Explore episodes per year. That's the goal. But we go to the destinations, come to us, and I have a conversation with them. What's a good fit with We Can Explore, and then I send them off to set it all up. You know, we talk about what their attractions are in the area. I talk about, you know, I love hiking. I do hiking every day. It's boring on camera. So we almost never hike on camera. That just doesn't happen. So where they might suggest, oh, we've got this beautiful hike, I'll ask them, well, can we mountain bike? Or, you know, we try to find something else to do in that area because hiking's so boring. We just really almost never do hiking. So, but there's visual aspects to it. There's, you know, just things that, you know, from doing it from 20 years, and actually we knew it within a year or 2 years, what works on camera, what doesn't. And then there's always surprises. You know, there's this great thing in Tasmania called the Tahoon Airwalk. And it's this bridge, it's this cantilevered, it's not a bridge because it doesn't go all the way across, but it's a cantilevered viewing platform. And Australia said, we're not interested in, you know, that's not going to come out. It's not going to be that beautiful. And I was like, well, you know, we're already there. Let's shoot it. And boy, that's what all the audience was just all about that. It's just amazing. You're about 600 feet in the air over the confluence of two rivers out in an area that is just wild as can be, with huge 100-foot plus eucalyptus trees and all the rest, and ferns everywhere. So it turned out, you know, that's one of the crazy things is in my, you know, I don't know how this will apply to everybody else, but in my profession is that sometimes you got to risk it a little bit. Sometimes you got to go, you know, it may not work, but let's give it a shot. If it doesn't add too much time and it's close by and something like that, give it a shot, especially if it's new. Because sometimes you go there and you say, this is going to be the highlight of the show, and then it just drops dead. And then you get this other thing where it's like, oh, this might be interesting. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So, you know, it comes back to that creativity, and you've got to be open to, you know, ideas.
So Jeffrey, I have a question for you, kind of along the lines of what you're speaking to now and thinking as a producer. Are you prescripting so that you know exactly what it is that you are going for? Do you go out with a shot list and kind of fill in the list? Or is your shooting philosophy to just kind of film, and then figure it out later? Or are you actually more kind of refrained and restricted in what you're shooting because you're trying to manage resources?
Okay,
so
yeah.
What's your philosophy about all of that?
Okay, so on Weekend Explore, it's a travel log. Okay, you know, I know a lot about these destinations before we get there. Most of them I've been to. I would say about 75% of our destinations I've been to, and I read a lot before I go and stuff like that. But this is really key. Is that I think we're storytellers. So in my mind, you know, and I didn't start in front of the camera. I started editing and creating these stories and doing shorts and stuff like that, like most everyone here tonight did. And so the key thing is that I know what makes a good segment. I know what shots are needed. And so I know, you know, and you can't tell how far a cameraman zoomed in or zoomed out, but or you can a little bit if you kind of really know your camera, but I really know my camera and I know exactly what I need. And I'm putting the story together as we go along. And I'm already taking notes, you know, like maybe not at that moment, but when we get back to the car, I'm typing in, you know, this is a little joke I thought of that I can include in the script. And here's a little, you know, so I've got this outline. So when we come back and we're putting this together, it's really fast for me to put a script together. And let me tell you how important it is that I did that, because we applied to do the Maritime Silk Road, which is we won Documentary Series of the Year award in Guangzhou, which has, or the Guangdong province, which has a big international documentary film festival. And we won a bunch of other awards with that series as well. I applied for the permits to shoot in China in 2009. I didn't hear back from them again until August 2016. And they said, if you came, when would you want to shoot? And I said, well, if we know before the end of the year, we can shoot in May, because I know how hot it is where we were going to shoot. And if we get the permits after the beginning of the year, then we're going to shoot, we'll shoot in October. I get a call in the second week in April, the week before I helped throw a conference for the North American Travel Journalists Association. And the next week is the NAB conference where I bought the 4.6K Mini Ursa. And we knew we were going to buy all this equipment. And then they said, we have film permits for you. And I said, great, we'll see you in October. They said, no, they're for May. And I said, I can't put a crew together in 2 weeks and I'm going to be gone the entire 2 weeks. And they said, shoot in May, or not only will you not be given permits to do this, we will never allow you to shoot in China again. So that was, and then I'm such a rebel that I was about to say, well, we're not shooting, right? But then they said, and this was when the permit was for an hour-long documentary, right? So then they said, well, is there any way that you could do 6 half-hour episodes? And I was like, what? And you have to understand that my idea, and when I did the research, was in 2009, and this is 7 years later. And I said, who's asking? And they said, well, we'll pay for all your travel and we'll give you $50,000 if you can make 6 half-hour episodes. And I said, let me sleep on that. But basically, I got there and I was creating the script in my head as we went along for a historical documentary series, which is very different than a travel log. But if you're a storyteller and you're a practiced storyteller, you know what it takes. And I was sleepless by trying to put it together. But I think the key thing I'm trying to say to everyone is that at the end of the day, what we do is storytelling. And you need to be practicing storytelling every day because you never know when the opportunities are going to drop in your lap. And I thought when I said yes, I'm like, I don't even know how I'm going to stretch this idea out to 6 episodes. We not only did the 6 episodes, we could have done 7, but now we have 18 more episodes mapped out, and we're trying to find sponsors. And I think if coronavirus hadn't come along, I think we would have nailed them down already. But I think once coronavirus, we're allowed to shoot again, that we will find those sponsors. We're approaching, we have a few and they're interested and they're big names. So, it comes back, know what you're doing, practice, do your stuff and get better and better and better. What we shot in 2001 wasn't even acceptable by the time we were 2004, even though we won an Emmy and other things back in 2001. And every year you just got to get better and better and better. So the minute you're sitting on your laurels, you're not at a plateau, you're going downhill. So you need to practice keep your tools sharp, and they got to keep getting better.
Very good advice.
It's not just good enough to use better equipment. Your storytelling has to keep getting better. And I think storytelling is getting better.
Well, there is kind of an evolution in how stories are being told too. When I think back over the course of my career, we're telling them very differently, but that's a topic for another meeting.
Right.
Why don't we move into part 2 of your presentation, and then we'll have another break for questions here shortly.
All right. And I'm going to share this.
That sounds great.
All right. So pass the questions. All right. Whoops. The present. This is Movie Town in Kanab, Utah. They shot all the good John Wayne films and Jimmy Stewart and all those films there. And it was part of that 8-day tour that I just returned from that I was telling you about. And this is my 20-year-old cousin, who is a fantastic actor if anyone ever needs an 18-year-old. And I say that with all 8 kids in my family that are young, having gone through acting. He's the star. He's amazing. So we can explore the present. We had all those shows set up and dead on arrival. So you wake up the day after, and I knew in January because Malaysia, we were in talks with Malaysia, and they were telling me, let's set the date that your crew's going to come and we're going to buy the airline tickets. And I was saying, but what about coronavirus? What about coronavirus? And I said, let's do another 2 weeks and we'll make a decision. And we kept doing that. We kept doing that. And by the middle of February, maybe the third week in February, I put the hold on all of the productions, even though we were talking to those destinations. And there's a tremendous amount of work involved. It takes 6 weeks of work to set up a two episode shoot in an international destination. And you've got to get that work done ideally 6 weeks before you go. So you've really got to be able to plan that stuff far out, because, you know, there's just so much involved, and you've got to make sure to make sure your equipment's up and all the rest. Oh, and one more thing I want to mention about our equipment is that we have backup for everything, absolutely everything. We have backups for SD drives. For every single connector, there's a backup, so that, you know, if we're out in the jungles of Borneo and something goes bad, we have a backup. So that's a big thing I forgot in the first segment. All right, so now we have to pivot. We had to pivot to our new opportunities. Well, we've been so busy with producing Weekend Explore episodes, because producing, you know, if you're in a studio, you can literally produce. You can sit in front of a camera and have some guests come in and produce an hour a day, no problem, you know, in a 40-hour week. And I don't say that offhandedly, that's a lot of work, but I've actually done that. So I know that that's very possible. Producing 12 to 13 episodes of Weekend Explore a year on the small staff that I have right now, that's a challenge. You add another project like the Maritime Silk Road or the Big Bay series, and, you know, Weekend Explore, you're only producing 6 or 8 episodes a year, because that's a lot of work. So there's a lot of opportunities that we weren't able to pursue. We have literally 1,000 hours of footage that we don't have in our stock footage library, because we just don't have time to put it in there and do all the cataloging, et cetera, that we need to do. There's other opportunities too, which I was speaking to in the beginning, which is, you know, taking our 6.5 minute segments that we do for the commercial and repackaging it to put it on YouTube, which is different content than we could put on as far as like full episodes on, let's say, Vimeo, because we're talking with them, or maybe on Amazon Prime. So all of a sudden, we went from this as fast as we can make it system of producing shows, where all of these other ideas were kind of back burner but important, to all of a sudden we have a load of time. So for us, it was this huge opportunity to go back and say, what are the different ways and areas, profit centers, that we are not taking full advantage of? And literally, we are still working full time to develop those profit centers, because there's so many of them that we haven't developed to their full potential. And even though right now they're not, you know, because people aren't producing that well, so even though we might be throwing time into the stock footage and stuff like that, that's something that's going to pay off for us long term. The channel, you know, destinations don't have money right now. Nobody's traveling, right? But as growing the YouTube channel is going to allow us to make money once people are back online, and people are doing some traveling now, but it's 40%, I think, is a good average across the board for destinations as far as their how much money they're making from TOT, which is hotel tax, which is their primary income. And, you know, the same thing goes with everybody else. And of course, cruise lines, oh, geez, those poor guys. So it's important right now for everyone. And of course, I'm in this kind of different situation, but there's some, you know, there's lots of opportunities. You know, some of the things you can still do. I know we have voiceover talents. We have people that are good in animation is becoming huge. So I've had some offers on stories. I've pitched some stories remotely, and they're animation stories, and I have a couple big names that are interested in seeing a treatment to those stories. you might want to write that screenplay that you have always thought about, but you haven't done yet. And then you might want to do further education. So that could be getting better at what you do, which comes back to what we were talking a minute ago about keeping your tools sharp and always improving them. Or it might be that you're getting your master's so that you can actually go teach on the side to give you another huge income stream that's maybe a little more stable than our industry typically is. Musicians, I know we have some great ones in our group, and maybe consider creating some royalty-free music and marketing that. Maybe making a presentation like this one where you're getting people out there to know you a little bit better. All of these things are great ways that all of us can pivot. One of the things that we're doing for We Can Explore specifically is we're now creating, in addition to the ones that I've already talked to you about, is that we're creating, so that's the pivoting. And we were talking about monetizing the previous projects, but we are also creating travel guides for all of our destinations. And we're getting local travel guides to keep those always constantly updated. So I highly recommend, this is what we're doing, is we're creating new opportunities for ourselves. And in a year from now, which is when I think things are going to start getting a little bit back to normal, my business is basically going to have doubled. My profit centers are basically going to have doubled. And so, now, especially with a lot of us on PUA and stuff like that, we have this golden opportunity that we're never going to have again in our lifetimes, that we have time to do projects that we're forced, that we might be forced into, but can create long time incomes for us. Residual incomes for us, and I think it's a great time. I think that really, I know I hear it all the time from people, and I know Jane mentioned it, and I'm not criticizing anyone here, but every time someone says, I've been locked in my house with nothing to do for 3 months, that is just not the person I am. Literally the day after lockdown happened, we were game planning. What's the next step? How do we pivot? How do we make money? How do we make what we're doing now better? And we've come up with more. Even if we're locked down for another year, we won't be able to develop all of the ideas that we came up with within a week. So I encourage all of you, especially if you have extra time and you're not working full time right now, that there are ideas that you can develop. Another thing I suggested here is to create a master class. So if you're really good at something, you can create a master class. And typically the way you do that to make money is you create half of the class for free. And then once you kind of get them involved, then you ask them to, hey, you want to learn more about this? Charge them a little bit amount. One of the things, I don't know what happened to the slide. I made it, and then when I flipped through this right before we started, it disappeared. But I'm really quite good on social media. And on my Instagram account, I have some posts that have over 325,000 views. Now, the average over the coronavirus era has been in the 25,000 to 30,000 views. But I've been averaging over 300,000 unique views per week during coronavirus. So that is not only good for my business, but that's an expertise that I have. I have about 29,000 followers on Twitter. So if you have an expertise like that, you can create a whole show. And now, because we're media professionals and media is the future, and what we're doing right now is the future, we have a voiceover talent expert, creating online programs where you kind of get people involved. They realize, you show them enough stuff to show that what you're talking about is valuable, and people are going to pay that money. And what we're creating with the Instagram, we're going to have, people that are just doing it for fun, that's going to, if they want to do the first 5, well, that's great. That gets them a good start. If they really want to start growing their Instagram, then it's going to be something cheap, maybe $6.95, $9.95. But we're going to do a catered Instagram program that's for destinations. 90% of the destinations out there, they are medium to small size. They don't have people that are specialists in social media. San Diego's giant. They have a whole company that does it. LA's giant. But then you have people that are smaller all across the nation, and we're going to be charging a lot more for that. So, we have a lot of experts in here with a lot of different expertise, and we have media capabilities. So for us, this is a natural to create things, create programs like this that we can create another income stream with. I think the key is that we are now working with coronavirus. So, and, someone just said, I can't remember who right this second, said it's going to be like this for 2 years. I think we're going to start to get back to normal around the June of 2021. I think we're going to start to get things figured out. So right now, we can't sit on our hands for another year. We need to start working with coronavirus. And so, and I know that some people are panicked about this, but I really want to maybe impart some of my enthusiasm, because I believe that every time something bad happens, there is an opportunity that's created. And I think we're in this optimal position, because especially here in San Diego, we are such a small community and we have to wear so many hats that we have a lot of skills and we can put stuff together. And we have this great group, San Diego Media Pros and San Diego filmmakers too, where it's like, if you don't have that skill, it only takes a couple of phone calls and you can put together some great stuff just from the 3 experts that we know. And we're such a small community that we're able to, do that stuff. It's amazing what our community can do when we work together. So I'm really encouraging you to do that. And we're on Zoom tonight. I made I did an Instagram presentation for the North American Travel Journalists Association about 3 days after close down, because travel writers were literally, they were literally out of work overnight because they weren't even allowed to travel, and this Instagram was a huge success. And we're looking to already do another one for them. And then I kind of found Zoom is a great way to, because you're able to record on your Zoom. So, if you really want to do it down and dirty and you're just delivering the information, just figure out Zoom, and you have this great platform that's free that you can create these teaching and expertise videos on. Let's see. And I really encourage you to engage on social media. It's a great time to build your social media. People are stuck at home, so they're on social media more. You make those valuable connections, and those people are going to come back when you say, hey, I just made this feature film, or I just went to Borneo and I shot this travel, whatever. And I think social media, if you have some extra time, now's a great time to increase your social media. If you're not on IMDb, and I have to say I'm the worst on IMDb. I need to get on IMDb, but that's something that I'm going to be doing here in the near future. Build a niche brand. The key is niche. I don't know if our group has really spoken to this much, but I speak about this all the time to travel writers. Don't go and be a generalist. You will fail. You need to be specific. Find a niche that you're the expert on. If you're a voiceover talent, that's your niche. If you're a lighting expert, because, all of a sudden everybody's got to be on Zoom, and you have these executives that are making $100,000, $200,000, $1 million a year, and they do not know how to light. So you create a thing that tell them what to wear, how to light themselves and stuff like that, and you're off and running. So, that, and there's going to be average people that are like, hey, I got to get in front of my boss and give a presentation, stuff like that. So there's lots of opportunities out there. You just need to figure out what you're an expert in, and you can create a niche brand. But again, focus on the niche. Don't try to just say, I'm going to teach you how to do a video. The more niche you are, I think the more successful you're going to be. It's definitely true in the travel writing and travel journalist industry. And I'm pretty dang sure it's going to be the same with us. Diversify your income streams, and all this stuff. A lot of this stuff that I'm talking about may not make you money immediately. The ideas I was just telling you, I think you can make money immediately on. But for example, some of the stuff that we're developing, we're not going to make money on until we're coming out of this dark cloud of coronavirus. But once we do, that stuff's going to make money for us for years and years and years and years. And I'm talking like decades. The stuff we went to high definition early in 2002. Everyone in Hollywood called me crazy. And what I was saying from the first time I saw it at NAB in 1997 is, as soon as you have a camera that's high definition, I want to test it and I want to buy it. And we got it from Panasonic. They brought 3 HD cameras in 2002 to the US. 2 never left their labs. And then they gave it to me for 2 weeks and they never asked for it back. So we kept using it for an entire year. And a year later, I get this phone call and they left a message. I was scared to death to call them back. But finally, after a day, I said, I got to call them back because they were looking for their equipment. And of course, I'm thinking, oh, they're going to chew me out. And then they said, have you been using our camera? And I was like, yeah. And they said, have you been filming destinations? And I was like, yeah. And they said, great. We want to sponsor you to go to travel expos and show people, these travel expos, like the LA Times travel show at that time had about 30,000 and the DC one had about 40,000 and the New York had about 60,000 a weekend. I was introducing HD television to 40,000 people a weekend plus and getting sponsored by Panasonic to do it. And that stuff that we shot in 2002, no one knows the difference. We shoot in an evergreen way, which is there's no cars in it, which is the key thing, no cars. We also don't use styles of clothes. I have very traditional cargo pants and solid colored shirts. So yeah, and so I promise you the stuff we've shot on whales and that in 2002 and in the Lake District and stuff like that, we're going to be showing that for another decade, maybe 2. And people are going to still watch it.
So Jeffrey, let me jump in here quickly, since one of the points that you made was about social media. What is the secret to your Instagram? We're all visual, we're all creative. Is it about hashtags? What are you doing to build that audience?
Okay, so I'm going to do a lesson and I'll give it all free to you guys when I do that. It's probably won't be until September, honestly.
Okay.
But one of the things when I got on Instagram is Instagram, for all of you that don't know, they have, you're allowed to, 99% of the people, they're posting still shots. And then 1% are doing videos. Well, I was doing these still shots and I'm like, we really do videos. And then I would post a video and the videos weren't doing as well as the still shots. Hashtags are super important. Putting the location, super important. Having a theme. This is something when I gave this presentation I was telling you about, I talked about, when I started Instagram, I just knew everything, just went in immediately, did everything right. Well, of course, that is not what happened, because Instagram, and I only started 2 years ago. So people are like, oh, I can't grow my account because Instagram was 6 years ago and it's not growing. I've done more growth in the last 3 months than I did before that. But there's a lot of key aspects to it. And it's going to take a 6 1-hour presentations to teach you all that. But one of the things I really wanted to do was I wanted to be able to post GIFs. And for some reason, Instagram was blocking me from doing that. And they finally started allowing you to do that. And so I have these little 2-second GIFs. So it's kind of a still picture with a little bit of motion. And it's, it's my ecotourism weekend explorer brand. and I was already growing great on still pictures, but as soon as I was able to do GIFs, it was like just throwing gasoline on a fire, and we just blew up. So again, it comes back to niche. If all I was doing, even if I was doing GIFs, which is pretty unique on Instagram, on all kinds of different travel stuff, I would not be as successful as what I am. Every day people want to go and they either want to see something amazing like the cliff dwellings I showed you a few minutes ago, or a large wild animal like buffalo is my post today in Yellowstone, not Yellowstone, in Mesa Verde. The Grand Canyon, geez. We've shot buffalo in those other places too. But at any rate, yeah. So I think it's just finding your niche. Okay, so now the present, right? 2 weeks ago, I had been posting from my library for 5 months. And considering I haven't made that many GIFs, I was running out of content. So the key is that I had to feed the beast. And oops, did I get knocked out of my presentation? So I had to feed the beast. So what did I do? Is it going to let me do it? I went on an 8-day road trip, and here you can see it. 8 days, 2,507 miles, right on 4,000 kilometers. 23 national and state parks, although the 23rd is the 7 Magic Mountains, which is the art installation outside of Las Vegas. Because in social media and just in general, even with television programming, we know this, and it's going to work into my story a little bit farther down the line. But we've got to feed the beast. And people right now, we have more attention from people right now than we will in the rest of our lives. So, and people are looking for new content. So all those competitions that you're thinking of in Spielberg and all the rest, they've got shackles on and they can't produce new stuff. We are light, nimble people that have a lot of imagination and can tell great stories. That's what San Diego Media Pros is all about. And so what I am challenging you to do is create the content that the public right now is desperate for. And so here you can just see on the right, just all this, look at all these amazing things. And I shot great content that I can be posting now for months, but I'm going to be doing another trip before the summer's done. One thing I also am doing, and again, this is about creating new profit centers and diversifying what I'm doing, is that I've been shooting tons of footage on my cell phone that I'm going to be editing together. Instagram really loves that stuff and will help your regular feed grow as long as you keep posting to Instagram TV. On Instagram TV, you need to have a minute long segment or longer. It has to be at least a minute long, whatever you're doing. And so I'm shooting tons of content for that. And so now we're back to questions, because that's the present.
Sure, I've got something to get us started, and then hopefully some people will drop some more into the chat as we go. So you kind of alluded throughout this section, kind of working with your team to pivot to monetize existing content, and even with what you just described, going out and strategically filming some additional material that then hopefully you can build on and draw from for some months while you wait for further travel opportunities to come along. So if you would sort of describe a little bit, are these folks that are with you as employees, as far as AEB5 is concerned? Are these all independent contractors? Is this really you and kind of you reaching to your network to kind of workshop some of these ideas? Essentially kind of who are the helpers? Who's the we that's helping you do this pivot?
Okay, so I have an associate producer. Well, we've all had to pivot a little bit, and in fact, our production assistant went and got a job restocking shelves for Nabisco. Okay. So, you know, because he's really not at a level that there's anything that we can have him do, and we just don't have the income to bring him in. But, you know, he's pivoted to keep himself ready so he can jump back in to go on these shoots as soon as we can do the shoots. And if I can bring him back on, and we're almost getting to the point now where we might, because one of his tasks was helping us with social media. And that was something that he was doing an hour a day, helping us with. Part of the reason that we don't have him doing that right now is that Instagram nails you if it's not from the same phone that it was posted by. So, and the reason they do that is they don't want bots in Eastern Europe, you know, going in and, you know, somebody hiring to get, you know, just lots of comments and stuff like that. So I understand it. You know, in our situation, we're building a brand, and it shouldn't be applied to us, but they kind of apply it universally. But yeah, and then, you know, my associate producer, he is doing what he's always done, which is he's always on top of the equipment. He helps me develop the ideas, and then we have our cameraman. You know, I can't use my cameraman right now, but now as things are starting to open up and there's some hotels and stuff like that, we are looking to, now my cameraman was never full-time with us. He only shot with us a third of the time, you know, or a fourth of the time. So he has a full-time job, but his full-time job allows him to go out because he learns so much when he shoots with us, and he brings these ideas back. So he's actually in a great situation because he's working out of a studio. So we kind of, you know, we can't use a cameraman until we can shoot again, but we are starting to look to do some regional shooting where it's maybe one or two of us. And that's going to come up in the future segment in a second.
Great. And my sort of follow up there, maybe exactly where you're headed next is, how do you apply sort of your experience with international travel and safety and vaccines and dealing with illnesses that may have already been out there, you know, malaria in certain parts of the world, or, you know, sleeping sickness or whatever, you know, there are these kinds of illnesses that you would have to kind of plan for in your travels. How does that look with traveling within the US now and being strategic and avoiding maybe coronavirus hotspots or outbreaks? You just went through the Southwest. There's quite a few states in the Southwest that are on the sort of hotspot list. So maybe you can speak to a little bit. What's your plan? What's your idea going forward for
Okay.
managing that?
Well, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the future part, but I want to talk about the question you asked as far as how we've done it to this point. Okay. We have, in 20 years of shooting Weekend Explore, the number one illness that happens, and people always think it's food poisoning. It's not food poisoning. People get dehydrated when they travel. They get on these long airline flights and they don't drink enough water, and then they're dehydrated. And the first day they get there, no matter what they eat, they end up getting sick. And then they said, oh, it's food poisoning because of the food that's there. And in fact, it's not food poisoning, it's dehydration. And it comes back to, I'm really well connected with Cirque du Soleil. I'm great friends with the head of marketing, but I was really connected with Cirque du Soleil before that. And their head safety officer told me probably a decade ago, he says, do you know what the biggest problem is, the injury that, you know, the biggest injury that we have all the time, that's the biggest problem for us? And I said, sprained ankle. And he says, exactly. He says, you know, I know we've, and tragically had a couple of deaths with Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas, but really, as far as like arm breaks and leg breaks and all that stuff, they almost never happen. It's the simple stuff, you know, and you know, this stuff we're doing with coronavirus, we've been doing that all along. I tell my crew, wash your hands, drink lots of water, you know, be careful, you know, and it's true not only of my crew, but the equipment. You know, I have my crew trained. Don't put stuff down on the ground, because then you're bringing the dirt up And when you put it in the van, then it's working into all your equipment, and then your equipment isn't working because you got dirt. Now, it's not going to happen the first time you do it, but you get in a habit of keeping things clean, and you'd be surprised. And the only thing we have ever had sickness-wise, I have a very robust immune system, and I got something that's really close to oh God, I'm blanking just under the the pressure of being on camera. Not the plague, it's the cholera. So it's a cousin of cholera. It's very common in equatorial areas. When most people get it, they have to go into the hospital and they're on antibiotics, IV drips for a week. And I had to keep producing because I had my crew of, this was a bigger project. This was the Maritime this was the Big Bay that I showed you the teaser of. We had a crew of 7 from the US and they had a crew of 9 from China, and it was co-production. So, and I was the guy leading the boat. So I had to get out there, but I'm in great health, and that's the worst that's ever happened. The only other 2 things that have happened was my associate producer got his foot stepped on by a horse once, and he just complained about it. It turned black and blue, but he was walking around fine the next day. And the other thing was, I told him he wasn't drinking enough water when we were shooting in India. I was telling him for days, you're not drinking enough water. All the rest of us, I was forcing everybody else, but he's a pretty stubborn guy. We've known each other our whole lives. And sure enough, he got dehydrated and he got sick. He says it's food poisoning, but we all ate from the same bowl, and there were 8 of us and not a single other person got sick. So it's like I told James, I said, how could it possibly be food poisoning? We all ate the same thing. It was dehydration. So dehydration is if you make sure you keep hydrated and wash your hands, you're going to be in good stead. And I will talk about the rest in a moment as we go to the next phase of this.
Yeah, fantastic. That sounds like great advice in general. Drink lots of water, wash your hands.
Right? We've been hearing it for months now. My crew is saying, you've been saying this for years. I said, I know, right? So, all right. The future. So the future isn't aliens. The future is good hygiene and wearing masks. And we're really kind of behind the 8 ball. When you go to Asia, people have been wearing masks for 20 years from my experience in going to Asia. Maybe not quite 20, but really close to 20. I mean, there were people wearing masks before in Asia, more than 20 years. But as far as the majority of them, it's been popular in Asia for about 20 years. And we've just got to get with the program, I'm going to be talking about the future. So I wanted to, I put in this little screen grab. I wrote a screenplay that was called Bubonic Plague, kind of a play on bubonic plague. And it has played out almost exactly how our coronavirus has played out. And the reason I did this screen grab was to show that I did it in 2005. And I pitched this to a bunch of studios, and they said it was too outrageous and that it was too sci-fi. It would make more sense if aliens came down than this. And I swear to you, even the president's denying of it. And in my story, the CDC director got fired, and he comes back and saves San Diego by blowing up the freeways and shutting down the airport until the plague actually breaks out in the rest of the US and saves the city. So at any rate, I just want to say I'm pretty good at looking into the future. Plan for June 2021. We've been talking about this because there was a comment early on about that. So I think we all need to look at things being pretty much the way they are right now until June 2021. And so we're going to have to learn to live with coronavirus. I need to switch my thing here. And I think a key thing, I'm going to do a little quote here from a doctor friend of mine, and it's very telling. And he's a specialist in this, in pandemics. And he said, A vaccine doesn't end a pandemic. Vaccinations end a pandemic. And so the key thing is even if we get a vaccine tomorrow, which couldn't happen, that tested and did everything that we wanted it to do, by the time everyone gets vaccinated, it's going to be June 2021. So that's a minimum that we're talking about, June 2021, before life could be like it was in December of this year. So we really need to plan for that. The future holds smaller crews wearing more hats. Here in San Diego, we are, I know I kind of mentioned this before, we're really good at doing that. So, in LA, where they can't produce a film with a crew of less than 40 people, and some of them have 90 and 100 and more than 100 people. Here in San Diego, we shoot with small crews all the time. So I think that we are really well positioned moving forward. And when I talk to my producer friends in LA, what are they trying to do? They're asking me advice on how I produce stuff, because they all feel that exactly what I just said is the future. And that here's a key thing that I've heard from about 3 major producers. One of them was a producer of major films for Disney for probably 6 years. He said, anything that gets produced of quality in the next 6 to 8 months is going to get snapped up. This guy's really well connected. He's got a bunch of projects going, and his projects were all 20 people plus, and he was considered super small in LA. And now he's trying to figure out how to do it with 5, 6 people like I do it. But he said that stuff's going to sell. And part of the proof that he offered, there's a bunch of proof that the different big producers I know up there have offered. But what he pointed out, which I thought was very interesting, is that Netflix is now buying content from Russia because it's so desperate to have new content. And he says, the lip syncing's terrible, the quality is terrible, but they're so desperate for new content because, back to what I was saying in just that last segment, is you got to feed the beast. So we all need to put our thinking caps on and figure out how to make money, because we can do it, and we are really well positioned to do that. Let's see. All right, so we're used to smaller crews to meet SAG requirements. SAG is not giving. I'm working on a film that we're trying to shoot. It was originally planned to start shooting on August 10th. It's a rom-com, scripted rom-com that's been pushed back a month at this point. And the sole thing that we are trying to figure out is coronavirus, which naturally enough. So the future is going to be these separated crews. So the camera crews on one side of the line and the actors are on the other. It's going to deal with a lot of testing for coronavirus. Actors, performers without masks, they're going to be tested every day. That's what SAG wants. The crew, they're saying twice a week. These things are still developing, but there is going to be a lot of coronavirus testing in our future. On these big productions in LA, I've been in a number of conference calls. They're saying it's adding 30 to 40% to their costs. So, but in LA, they're so desperate for new content that they're willing to do that. That's almost prohibitive. It's pretty prohibitive for us smaller indie producers, even on a small crew. But the key comes back to what I was saying in the very beginning as far as safety. And, if somebody gets coronavirus, that's bad. If somebody catches it while they're on your set and ends up dying, that is trouble. So everyone's trying to figure this out. But I think I'm still confident, even with these spikes, although I think that we need to wait until these spikes settle down a bit. But with these spikes, I think you can do this safely. I think with measuring the temperatures of everybody before they come on set, all the crew and all the actors, and testing the way SAG requires, I think we can have a safe set. It's still important to point out that of 100 people that get tested, only 4 on average, it changes in different different areas around the country and when you're testing and all the rest, but only 4% of that 100, so 4 out of 100 are testing positive. So that's still a very small number. So if you're taking all these other precautions and you're especially writing your crew your performers to say, hey, you know what? You can endanger our entire production. And really, you're only talking to the main people. You're talking to the top 6 people that are in most of the scenes. The film that we're looking to shoot has 30 different speaking parts, but all the rest of them, there's only 6 that are in there all the time. The other 24 are only 1 or at most 2 days. So you can get them tested and get their results within 24 hours. And as long as you keep them from going out that one night, all you need to focus on is those 6 people. As far as what we do, I'm going to keep my crew, I'm going to even go smaller for regional stuff. And probably it's just going to be a cameraman and maybe an assistant cameraman, production assistant, and myself. And we're going to do smaller stuff. Now there's a couple of things that are going to be the consequence of this. We're not going to be at the quality. I think we can maintain our quality level, but I think that but we're going to have to shoot over a little bit longer time. So where we used to shoot a show in 2.5, 3 days, that's going to get extended to 4 days because there's no way we can do the same amount of work. We're already working too hard, and maybe even 5 days. So that's one of the things that's going to change. As far as these high-end productions in LA, I think there's going to be less of them, especially in the near future. But I think there are benefits to being a specialist where all you do is you're the DP and you've got somebody that's, rack focusing, and you've got all these other people that have specific jobs because they can get to know those jobs so fantastically well that nobody in the world can do them better than they can in LA. And that's the truth of it, right? But with that said, there's going to be less of those high-end films made for the next year and maybe the next 2 years. But I think that there's more acceptability. I think people realize that, we're under the gun here and they want to see new stuff. So back to what I was saying about, producing great information on Zoom, people are going to be more open to that. For those of us that are really old like me, you'll remember when MTV came in. And MTV, they were doing this little motion with the camera, and everyone had their, you can't shoot like that, and it's whatever. And MTV was partially doing it stylistically, but partially doing it because they could have one camera cover more things than if the cameras are tied down, so they could do the shoot with less cameras. And all of a sudden it became the norm, and now with YouTube, people just holding out their cell phone and doing stuff like that, that started to become a norm on YouTube, and it wasn't accepted on TV. But now that we're seeing plays and choirs and stuff like that on Zoom, where 2,000 people are coming together remotely, people are opening their minds to new ways of doing things and new content. And the winners, I really believe the winners are going to be people that are in different that come up with different ways of producing stuff. And I think that people are really going to be more interested in good stories and maybe not quite so critical on the quality. And I think that's going to bode well for all of us here in San Diego. This is the new normal. So one of the things that I want to stress with everyone is if you want to start producing, when we're out on the road, we're producing at least 10 to 12 hours a day and sometimes 14 hours a day. Well, you should start practicing wearing a mask 6 hours a day. and start working your way up from there, because it's hard to do. I've been gearing myself up because we're going to need to have those masks on. So we need to start anticipating what the roadblocks are going to be, because coronavirus is the new normal. Oh, let's see. I want to see if I'm. Yep, I think I talked about all that. Let's go to the next thing. The new normal's not going away. So here comes back to, you know, why I put in that little thing of me doing the screenplay on the plague, which I thought was ripe to happen, and of course now has happened. Well, I'll tell you right now, and I'm hearing it from, I have a friend that's a bigwig at Verizon, and I'm hearing it from other huge companies. And I was already talking about this happening before I heard from these people. It's actually in response to me saying it that I got this response, is that when coronavirus is done, you're not going to see everybody go back to work 5 days a week in the same cubicle that they were in before. You're going to see, I would say, 40%, if not more, maybe 60% of work being done from home in the future. So, and this is going to, and the government is going to encourage this, because all the traffic that they're having to build these very expensive freeways, if all of a sudden people are spending, working from home half of the time, all of a sudden freeways have doubled in size, or you have half the traffic, depending on how you like to look at that. So, I speak of it now, and that's not directly related to film, but or TV. It's what we do. But I just want to stress to everyone that the new normal is not going away when coronavirus is done. So there's going to be some things that go back to a little bit more normal, but we're going to be in a whole new world in June 2021 or after, even once we get the vaccine from coronavirus. So we need to start looking to the future and thinking, how is that going to impact what we do and how we make money? And I think the earlier we start focusing on that, the better off we're going to be at the other end of this. And just to speak to this a little bit more, I think that commercial real estate is going to tank. I think that commercial real estate is going to be converted to high density residential. And the reason I mention that to us is that many of us work from our houses. So now we, can start looking, we need to start being in living spaces where we can produce things. So, all right, now I'm going to go on to what is BP? BPTV is Barnstormer Productions Television. That's when I got the URL bptv.com. It's because bp.com was taken the night before. So I'm aging myself, but I think that was 1994. Oh, all right. So the projects. I was telling you about us. We had Malaysia set up. We had Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Indonesia. Those were all shoots that were set up. Malaysia has done a great job with coronavirus, and they are starting to try to get me down to Malaysia. A few years ago, I paddled a scientific supply canoe 500 miles down the Amazon, and I'm editing that footage together now, but we need to get some more animal footage out of the Amazon. And so I'm going to be going to Brazil as soon as they open up and allow that. And one of the new normals is going to be 14-day, we were talking about it earlier in the news segment, but quarantining for 14 days. Well, that's an interesting thing, because I'm going to be going down, I'm a cameraman, and I'm going to be going down and shooting wildlife along with some stand-ups. So while I quarantined, the plan is that I'm going to go down with the camera equipment and quarantine in a hut in the middle of the Amazon and shoot the animal B-roll while I'm quarantining. once the quarantine's up, I'm gonna hire a cameraman down there to film. And I think that that's what we're gonna find a lot more of, is that China wants me to come and shoot a 50-part series in China. That's not gonna happen, but maybe not against an 18-part series. And right now, what we're talking about is flying me over and quarantining for 14 days, which is required, and starting that project. So, you know, being the host, it's kind of an interesting dilemma, hosting and producer. But these 14-day quarantines, you know, if you're thinking about producing internationally, we're going to be up against that. And we're going to need to, the only reason I speak to this is that here are the solutions that I'm coming up with, you know. So I go there and hire a cameraman and stuff like that, and then we can, you know, shoot the footage back this direction. It'll probably be a low res, and we can get some editing started at that point, and then come back and conform it when I bring the footage back up. But for now, you know, it's probably not going to be possible. And maybe even if I brought my cameraman, I'm still not going to be able to bring the other, you know, the other 3 or 4 people that we need. It's just too cost prohibitive to go down and bring a crew for 14 days that isn't doing anything and paying. It was cost prohibitive before, when I was just paying them the 2 days down and a day for jet lag and the 2 days back. You know, that's cost prohibitive. There's no way we can do it right now. And I know that a lot of you out there are pulling your hair going, what does that mean for me? Well, the flip is going to be true. You know, there's going to be German crews that they're going to send the host and they're going to send the producer over here, and they're going to need to hire camera crews. So, you know, some of the people that, you know, that are a gun for hire, you might want to start reaching out to some of those countries that shoot frequently in the United States to offer your services. Maybe that's another direction that the club needs to go in, is making sure that what services we have available through the people in our club is very easy to determine for foreign producers like myself that need to come in and produce something, but they can't bring their whole crew to quarantine for 14 days because it's just too expensive. So right now, that's what we're working on. We're working on the stuff I was telling you about in today, and those are the projects moving forward. I'm trying to get that rom-com shot, and we plan to go to Malaysia and to also to Brazil. And then the other shoots have been tentatively postponed for exactly a year from when we had planned to shoot them this year.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Robin, what do we have in terms of any final questions? We're just about out of time, but I wondered if you had a couple.
Sure. Yeah, we're just about at 7:30 or just after, when we like to wrap up. But we would be absolutely remiss if we spoke to somebody that is a travel documentarian journalist and didn't ask you what was the favorite place that you've ever been to and gotten to shot at, and what is the one place that you're most excited to go and shoot at once all this is over. We can go back to traveling without some of the considerations you just talked about. So two-parter: favorite place you've been to, favorite place, or what's the one place you're most looking forward to?
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the stock answer, because that question is asked every single time I give a talk, especially at travel shows. And the answer I give at travel shows, I'm gonna give you an answer, but the answer I give at travel shows is the question that you're really asking if you're a traveler, not a filmmaker, is what destination have I been to that you want to go to the most? And for me to answer that, I ask them, what do you like to do? And then I can give them a couple of suggestions. Now, as far as filming goes, you know, for a lot of us are cameramen. So, you know, and anybody that's a cameraman, what is it all about? It's about the light, you know? So, and I mean, it's more than just the light, but it's the light, you know? And recently I was shocked at the fantastic light that exists in Southwest Florida. It is just the most beautiful light. Even though there's, you know, there may be some Dumbo clouds in the air, there's so much humidity in the air that it cuts down all that really harsh contrast. And I'm not sure how it does it, but it is just spectacular to shoot there. Another place that's just fantastic to film is Fiji. You just can't turn your camera any direction. And even though there's a lot of humidity in Fiji, it's not quite like Southern Florida. What place do I want to shoot the most? Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get back to Brazil. And I am not recommending anyone go to where I'm going in Brazil. Where I'm going into Brazil, when I did this scientific expedition, I was getting bit more than 100 times a day. So I did an article for Travel World magazine, and they said, "Oh, can you send us a picture of, you know, these bites?" And the first picture I sent, they said, "Do you have another picture? Because that's too graphic." So I sent them one that had less bites, and they loved that one. The first one, they said, "We can't publish this. No one will want to read the rest of the article." But it is amazing down there. And one of my projects, just as an aside, is I'm hoping to preserve the entire 500 miles into a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So that's half of what I'm going to do when I go down to Brazil. So, and was there another question in there that I didn't answer?
Nope, you hit it. I think that's great.
I think you hit it. And I think we're out of time. We're at 7:36, and we very much appreciate you, Jeffrey Lehman, for being here tonight and sharing all of this great information with us. One of the things I'm taking away is, among other things, I'm taking so many things away, but one thing, and this is minor, in the grand scheme, is that we should all be following one another on Instagram. We should be building one another's social media following, and also taking away some of your ideas about how to pivot, because it sounds like you have done that successfully, and congratulations to you. And I know that I've got a couple of ideas that I'm going to start percolating thanks to your presentation tonight. So thank you, Jeffrey, for being here. This has been absolutely wonderful. Looking ahead, August is usually our summer social, where we all get together and have a beverage and a bite to eat. And I'm not sure that that's going to be happening this year. So we're going to have to figure that out for our August meeting. And we will be posting the information on our Facebook page, of course, and sending it out on the newsletter. As always, if you have any ideas for programming, this is your organization, and we would really like to hear from you. So please feel free to reach out to me. My email is on the website, or at the bottom of the newsletter. You can find me so that we can gather some great ideas and keep our organization moving forward. But thank you for spending part of your Tuesday evening with me. We'll see you next month, and have a great week. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yes, maybe.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much.